Welcome to This Explainer, where we're investigating a very real, very modern political mystery. Why are so many of today's democracies dying from the inside out? You know, it used to be that when a democracy fell, it was loud, it was sudden, and it was obvious. But today, the data tells a completely different, much quieter story. And honestly, the real culprit might actually surprise you.
Take a look at this. Notice the exact moment those lines cross. It's wild because it proves that tanks and military coups are no longer the primary killers of democratic governments. If you follow the timeline from 1990 to 2020, that dotted line, the one representing democratic collapse by military coup, is generally trending downwards. But then, look at that solid black line shooting straight up since the early 2000s. That right there is democratic collapse by an incumbent power grab. Today, democracies are most frequently dismantled by the exact same people elected to lead them.
Okay, so let's dive into this investigation by actually shifting our focus away from the suspect, the elected leader, and taking a closer look at the accomplice that enables them. Standard political science assumes that almost all leaders naturally want to maximize their own power, right? So why does some actually succeed in dismantling democracy while others are just stopped dead in their tracks? Well, the answer doesn't necessarily lie in the personality of the leader, but in the specific structural nature of the political party standing right behind them.
So here's our roadmap for unpacking this whole thing step by step. We're going to cover 1. The new democratic threat. 2. The rise of personalist parties. 3. Dismantling the guardrails. 4. The ripple effect. And 5. How to actually protect democracy.
All right, let's jump into part 1, the new democratic threat, elected strongmen.
You see, this new era of democratic backsliding doesn't begin with dictators seizing power by force on day one. No, it starts with freely and fairly elected leaders. Venezuela, under Hugo Chavez, is pretty much a textbook example of this inside job. In 1998, Chavez is elected in entirely free and fair elections, but literally just a year later, in 1999, he starts curtailing the power of the legislature and purging the judiciary. Fast forward to 2004. After surviving a recall vote, the real purges kick in. We're talking firing public workers and pulling welfare benefits from anyone who opposed him. By 2005, the opposition just completely boycotts the elections out of fear and intimidation, which effectively signaled the end of Venezuelan democracy. It's just a slow, methodical chipping away at the pillars of democratic rule.
Moving on to part 2, the rise of personalist parties, our accomplice.
Now, you're probably wondering, why doesn't a leader's own party just stop them when they start breaking the rules? Well, it all comes down to this definition, which is basically the linchpin of our entire explainer: personalist parties. These are parties like Chavez's MVR or Alberto Fujimori's Cambio 90 down in Peru that act purely as personal career vehicles. Their whole purpose is to promote the leader, not to advance actual policy. These aren't your traditional old-school parties built on decades of shared ideology. They're often thrown together just months before an election by the leaders themselves, specifically designed as a tool to secure executive power for that one single individual.
So why are these types of parties suddenly popping up everywhere? Well, 2 global factors have made it so much easier for leaders to just bypass traditional party building entirely and go straight to the voters. First, there's the changing media landscape. TV, and especially social media, highly prioritize striking visuals and magnetic personalities way over dense, complex policy debates. Second is partisan de-alignment. All over the globe, voters are just feeling way less attached to traditional party brands than they used to. They're increasingly voting for the person, not the party.
Let's break down these 2 massive deficits to see exactly why elites within these personalist parties simply will not, and honestly cannot, push back against their leader. First up, a complete lack of incentive. The elite members in these parties, who are often just friends or family of the leader, owe their entire political careers to that single person. If the leader goes down, their career is totally over. They don't have some independent party brand to fall back on. And second, there's a serious lack of capacity. The party has no independent financial resources and no seasoned grassroots organizing skills. Without the leader's network, they've got no money and no structure. They literally lack the basic tools to act collectively and organize any kind of resistance.
Think of this as our detective's corkboard. It brilliantly maps out the exact route from a personalist party straight to democratic collapse. Start right at the top. You've got a leader backed by a personalist party. Because of what we just talked about, the party actors have low capacity and low incentive to stop them. That directly cascades into reduced institutional checks on the executive, which then loops down to lower societal checks, ramps up polarization, and finally leads us right into that dark gray box at the bottom: democratic backsliding. It's a completely predictable chain reaction.
Okay, part 3, dismantling the guardrails, hollowed institutions.
So, what actually happens when the party completely fails to tap the brakes? Because that first guardrail, the political party, is basically made of paper, the leader just crashes right through the legislature, the courts, and the bureaucracy. Step 1. The legislature simply becomes a rubber stamp for the executive's agenda, especially if that personalist leader wins a majority. There's zero internal pushback. Step 2. The judiciary gets purged or packed with compliant appointees. Their main goal: protecting their own jobs rather than actually upholding the law. Step 3. The bureaucracy. Those professional civil servants are just ingeniously circumvented.
There's this fascinating observation about Patrice Talon over in Benin that perfectly highlights this. It shows how leaders can sidestep bureaucratic constraints just by creating entirely new, parallel state agencies. If traditional ministries push back on a power grab, you don't even have to fire them. You just create a shadow agency right inside the president's office, give it the exact same powers, route all the funding directly there, and completely bypass the formal state apparatus. It is incredibly and terrifyingly effective.
Which brings us to part 4, the ripple effect, beyond state institutions. Once those initial guardrails are broken, the damage just ripples outward into society. Hollowing out the state totally emboldens leaders to push even further. As the ultimate real-world test of a power grab, check out how an increase in party personalism dramatically boosts a leader's attempts to extend their own term limits. Term limits are a cornerstone of democratic rotation, right? Leaders only attempt to abolish or extend them when they truly believe they can get away with it. Notice that when ruling party personalism is high, and especially when they hold legislative majorities, leaders just feel unleashed. They push the boundaries because they know for a fact their party won't stand in their way.
Now, this is wild. Polarization isn't always just some pre-existing condition in society. It's often actively manufactured by the leaders themselves to force voters to tolerate anti-democratic behavior. We usually think polarization causes democratic decay, but the research actually suggests that by attacking state institutions and constantly demonizing opponents, leaders create this extreme us versus them environment. This effectively forces their supporters to loosen their commitment to democratic norms, accepting really bad behavior just to keep the opposing side out of power.
Finally, part 5, how to protect democracy.
So, if democracies are essentially dying from the inside, how do we actually stop this cycle and reinforce the internal structure? Well, the data shows us that our absolute best defense is investing in traditional programmatic parties that maintain independent resources and outlive their founders. Programmatic parties are built on actual policy. They maintain internal democracy, and they have the organizational muscle to stand up and say no to a power-hungry leader. They act as that crucial first line of defense. Personalist vehicles, on the other hand, simply collapse the second their charismatic leader is gone, offering absolutely zero institutional resistance to a power grab.
I really want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to consider the very next time you cast a ballot in your own country. Look closely at the names on the ballot. Are you supporting a robust, programmatic party that's going to outlast its current candidate, or are you merely fueling a vehicle designed to serve a single personality? The very survival of democratic institutions might literally depend on knowing the difference. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the political structures around you.